Imagine this. You're one of the top recruits in the nation for basketball, and on one of your visits to a school, you don't really like the school. But after the trip is done, coach comes up to you and offers you $10,000 a semester on top of already a full ride scholarship. Does your mind change? The NCAA, or National Collegiate Athletic Association, is every year is under intense scrutiny on their ruling on whether or not they're going to change the rule of allowing athletes to get paid. Right now it's illegal to pay college athletes. Both of my parents played sports in college, and I played sports my whole life. I'm 21 years old and currently under the college recruiting process myself. And since the ruling could change, and while I'm in school, I've done some intense research on why the NCAA has or hasn't already changed the legality of allowing to pay these college athletes. Everyone knows someone who's played college sports or who are going to play college sports in the future, and adding money to the decision process only is another factor that could help someone or it could hurt someone in the recruiting process and picking the right school. Every main point and every issue has some pros and cons, and some of those pros and cons are the fairness that comes with paying these athletes, what these athletes will do with the money, and how the game will change due to the payments. Some of the pros the NCAA sees with paying the money is the fairness, because these athletes help rake in all this money. They also see that these athletes will get money management skills, and the sports in general will be much more competitive. The NCAA is a multi-billion-dollar company, and USA Today sports section released some information that some schools make up to $60 million a year just on their athletics alone. That comes from jersey sales, tickets, anything to do with anything athletics. That's how much they make. And the players don't receive any of that money. They can't even sell their own autographs without it being illegal. Donald Remy is the NCAA's general counsel and vice president for legal affairs, and he said the NCAA, in accordance with courts, have addressed the issue and believe student athletes aren't employees. That means that legally they don't have to get paid, and that's their biggest argument they have. But in a student athlete self-report that came out in 2010 during a UNC lawsuit, it showed that some students spend more than 40 hours a week on their respected sport. Last time I checked, 40 hours a week in anything was an average work week. And that's not including their school. Salary would also help these players deal with money. In 2009, a Sports Illustrated report showed that after 2 years of retirement from the NFL, 78% of those players went broke. 5 years out of the NBA, 60% of those players went broke. It would allow these players to have money management on a small scale before they went to the pros. And if they were in money management classes, it would be a lot more beneficial because they actually have the money. So Peter Jacobs from the Business Insider, he's the one who did the report on the UNC lawsuit, and he found another study that shows that some players spend more than 45 hours a week on their sport. And again, that doesn't include any of their school time. And so they couldn't get a side job for the expenses that aren't covered under their scholarship. And on top of that, not everyone is under a full ride scholarship. So the money they got from the NCAA would help pay for those extra expenses and possible people who need to pay the college back. Paying athletes would just make the sports in general much more competitive. Court Gaines, the editor of the Business Insider sport page, released some stats that show that an average NFL career is only 3 years long. So if we paid these players to stay in school, they would have a degree when they backed out, and they would be a little bit older. So after their professional experience, they'd have a degree to fall out on. And since they are older, they're gonna be older, and seniors are gonna be bigger, faster, and stronger, which makes for just better athletes and better sports in general. By law, the NCAA doesn't have to pay these student athletes, but it only seems fair to. And on top of that, they can get money management skills along with just more competitive sports, which everyone wants. These ideas sound great on paper, but there's a bunch of yellow flags next to them. The NCAA can't only just look at the legal reasons, but they need to look at some moral reasons as well. It seems a bit unfair not to pay the players, but it may be even more unfair in the recruiting process. We don't know how these students will handle all this money, and we don't know what the game will be like if we start paying these students. The gap in between the top universities and low universities for the recruiting process is already super spread out. And USA Today showed a gap in athletics money earned every year annually between Texas A&M and Alabama A&M. Texas A&M, Alabama A&M is $65 million in between. That has shown that the bigger schools like Texas A&M could recruit way better players than Alabama A&M because they have the money to. So it wouldn't allow for any of these small schools that gain any traction in the recruiting process. On top of that, the money that used could just be kicked back to the university. It'd be fair to all the students and faculty who use the facilities often and doesn't just benefit the athletes. These bad spending habits, like I stated above, aren't just a turn on, turn off switch. As we learned, these professional athletes had bad spending habits, and what would change it for these college athletes? And with all these bad influences like drugs and alcohol that are prevalent on these college campuses, who knows what these players are going to get into? Marshawn Lynch even said in an E60 interview, "I'd like to see their mistakes when their dreams come true at 20 years old." He's an all-pro running back who's gone through the ups and downs, and he even said at 20 years old, when you start making money, when your dreams come true of playing the sport you love and get paid for it, you're going to make mistakes, and that's just part of it. But it's also part of the NCAA's job to watch out for those mistakes. If you're paying these players to keep them in college, it just changes the whole sport as a dynamic. First off, these players shouldn't probably be in school if you have to pay them to be in school. They're there for the wrong reasons and only taking up space. In a recent interview I did with Coach Curley, who's a former NCAA student himself and a current hockey coach, he said, "You are getting a free education from a top-tier school." That's payment itself. So we're already paying these players in free school, and if we do pay them, the love of the game might go away because contract issues might spark, transfers from smaller schools to bigger schools might start, and any money-related things might start that you see in professional sport might leak into the college atmosphere. And part of the reason why people like college sports is because of the atmosphere and them playing for the love of the game. Now, we don't know how these players will act with the money, but it's our job and the NCAA's job to look out for those possible side effects that might come with paying these players. Now that you've heard both sides of the NCAA reasonings on why paying these players is both fair and unfair, how giving them paychecks is also positive and negative, and the possible dynamics that might be positive and bad, it might go bad by paying these players in just the sports in general, I hope you get sparked up, and I hope you go off and figure out what you believe is right. But one thing I'm going to say is that fair isn't always fair, and you should remember that, and make sure whatever decision you make, you have 110% backing behind it, because this is a big decision that affects thousands of lives every year. So thank you for my time.